Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Duet Ninja Dojo Live. Every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Well, thank you for joining me. And hopefully us will be included.
Ninja warriors, the powers they hold are legendary.
Do you know what it's like to fall down a hill of grenades with a pin pulled? You're about to find out. Fuck were you thinking?
That although Trump was president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was a fundamentally private one. Smith also laying out new details about Trump's conduct and conversations in the days and hours before his supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021.
Everything is so beautiful. I wanna drop it down low. Everything is so beautiful. I wanna drop it down low. Everything is so beautiful. I wanna drop it down low. Everything is so
I go by the Duet Ninja. I explain shit.
Let's talk about the Duet Ninja for a second.
And to think I hate. Well, that's very telling. Talking about demographics and the facts based on demographics, i.e. who voted for who in this situation, clearly points to the fact that being divided, being categorized is something that is very real. So clearly, first and foremost, you think I'm dividing the country again. Whew, a whole lot of privilege in that statement. But you think I hate simply because I'm agreeing with a young lady who was talking about the basic breakdown, not only about DEI, but for the fact that Trump was voted in by a certain group of people, overwhelmingly. So what's your problem? Why are you so angry?
Hi, I go by the Duet Ninja. I explain shit. I'm going to talk to you about something. And this goes in line with these ridiculous individuals, especially on the Republican side, that constantly talk about debt, constantly talking about running this country like a business, and not understanding what it takes to be a leader of a business, especially one that goes above and beyond their contribution to the community, because they realize the community is the only reason why they exist. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you can't run a government like a business, especially when we're talking about a democratic society based on a republic. You cannot run a fucking country like a business. And it just bugs the hell out of me that this country, especially, people are saying this when on the flip side, the way businesses have ran in this country, those who ran a lot of the businesses in this country have been doing things unethically. You can clearly see that by the wages in this country. You see, ladies and gentlemen, ethical leadership is why Musk, Trump, majority of Congress people who are getting these monies, dark money, things you can't trace, especially now. This is why everyday Americans are having a hard time with any fucking thing, because ethical leadership has never been at the center of voting people into office that wield power. Americans as a whole don't give a fuck about ethical leadership. And this is why we have individuals like this clown I'm burning right now, all on Elon's nutsacks, all on Trump's hair follicles. Well, the ones that are actually his. Let me talk to you. Hey, Thunder Goose. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and it's going to tie into the information I'm going to share with you guys. So I appreciate that. I'll be on camera in about 3 minutes, but thank you, man. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Duet Ninja Dojo Live. I go by the Duet Ninja. I explain shit. That's what I do. I love doing it. I'm a former 9th grade history teacher, world history to be specific. I was a degree in psychology, minor in sociology, associate's degree in sociology. And I live to learn. I love people. I'm a people person, and this is one of the main reasons why I choose to talk about these topics. So, as you can see here, somebody's already commented. It's one of the reasons I start the live early so people can, put their 2 cents in on things and see how it coincides with the information I'm going to drop on you guys. But yeah, so we're talking about love, agape love to be specific, and actually attaching love to agape is kind of redundant because agape itself is referring to that existence, right, that feeling of love, but in a different sphere, so to say. Of course, there are different levels of attachment when it comes to love. It's a reward type of thing. Humans are created, but yeah, this is a great start here. Comment about that. Appreciate it. Quick, let me just read this definition for you guys, and then I'll jump into the AI conversation I had. It's amazing. It's amazing. But so agape, okay,
It's a Greek term referring to a selfless, unconditional, and sacrificial form of love, often considered the highest and purest kind of love, particularly in Christian theology. I know, right? It's contradictory. When you start talking about that, it's extremely contradictory. We'll get into it. Again, I'm not here to bash on Christians. I love accuracy. If you haven't noticed, words tend to make people do things because it transpires into other things. Anyway, unlike emotional forms of love, agape is a deliberate choice and a commitment to action, focused on the well-being of others, other persons, regardless of their worthiness or the possibility of reciprocation. Okay, and so something like a motherly love kind of situation. Even that's subjective. Anyway, so some key characteristics, right? And I'll let me get this up for you guys real quick because this is what we'll be talking about. Okay. So there's key characteristics. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, and the fifth one again. Unconditional, right? Is a aspect of it. Selfless, sacrificial, as I mentioned, and action-oriented. That particular one makes this whole Christian thing a little fuzzy. Again, just going off of what it is. I'm going off what it is. Anyway, so here we go. Oh, is it? I am so sorry, folks. So sorry about that. Sorry about that. Let me get this. Get that music off here. There we go. You're fine, guys. By all means. Now I'm a one-man show, so sometimes I make yeah. Anyway, so the divine aspect of this whole agape love thing, it goes by in Christianity. Agape is seen as God's perfect love for humanity, a love that is both a gift and a calling for believers to emulate, to copy, to be like. I'm sure you see the redundancy here. In Christianity, now this is separate from what it actually is. Agape is what it is. It's a selfless, unconditional, and sacrificial form of love. In the divine aspect, right? So again, you're separating it. In Christianity, right? Again, categorizing, putting it into a box. It doesn't say anything about Islam or Buddhism, and neither. It just says Christianity. Go figure. It is seen as God's perfect love for humanity, a love that is both a gift and a calling for believers to emulate. In what society that has Christianity as its primary form of religion has that ever been across the freaking board? We all understand the term, there's no love like Christian love. It just seems like they're trying to force this opinion in the definition and the meaning of the whole thing. But let's talk. So, if the overall goal is the overall benefit of humanity, the form of love that stands out above cultural constraints is often described as agape. Unconditional, selfless love that extends beyond personal, romantic, or tribal boundaries. Here's why. Stick with me here, folks. This is this whole thing gives me hope for humanity, ultimately. Okay, so the definition of agape again is rooted in philosophical traditions, Plato, Aristotle, and spiritual teachings. But why is it beneficial globally? The why, okay? It reduces division. Off gate, it reduces division. Who benefits if we do not come together as a collective unit within humanity? Who benefits from that?
right? It's not tied to exclusivity. My this, my that, my this. It works against the us versus them mentality, that whole tribalism that people talk about, right? It encourages cooperation, prioritizes empathy, even with strangers or perceived enemies. The whole emulate, right? That's why the Bible's contradictory, because that same God is also a very destructive entity, a hateful entity to be. Anyway, sustainable. It doesn't rely on fleeting attraction or shared culture. Less vulnerable to resentment if expectations aren't met. Patience, empathy, compassion. Things we don't necessarily see on a daily basis. Because the opposite of these things I just mentioned is exactly the world that we live in. And why do we live in such a world that causes us to act in this manner? To not question. Resilient to change, can adapt across generations, political shifts, or technological changes because it's value-based, not tradition-bound. It's value-based, not tradition-bound. I'm oh boy. I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm saying, yeah. Indeed it is, Goose. Indeed it is. Okay. And now, this whole thing, it breaks down into the forms of love, the strengths, the risks, impact on humanity. You can take a look at that if you like. I could share this thread from my feed if you also like to go through this information. It's a lot more here than I'm going to go into, but again, this is very important. Because we still have an opportunity to teach our children this, folks. We still have an opportunity to be this. To emulate something that you cannot see, hear, or feel is why we fail. If I cannot have a living example in front of me, first and foremost, how am I going to trust that that's going to be the outcome? Agape doesn't allow fear to enter the mathematical equation, so to say. Fear does not enter. It has the ability to adapt. It's inclusive. It's unconditional. It can be misunderstood as weakness. That's the risk. You see, agape love without a purpose, it is weakness. But if you have that type of love and compassion, but at the same time are willing to sacrifice even with violence to preserve that, that's not weakness. That's discipline. Greatest potential for peace and unity. That's why Christianity can never be a part of that. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. So the historical precedent when involved in this, right? When societies emphasize universal love or compassion, what has happened? You have the civil rights movement. You have diplomatic resolutions that are more possible, i.e. the civil rights movements. You have 3 civil rights bills in the mid-60s. Global humanitarian aid rises without cultural bias. And you see how that's been snatched away from millions of people across the world simply because of a certain administration. There's no love in the White House. Only the facade of. When societies emphasize exclusive or possessive forms of love, nationalism, religious intolerance, and racial division intensify. Go figure, right? When societies emphasize exclusive or possessive forms of love, nationalism, religious intolerance, and racial division intensify. None of that has to do with love. That's power. Power via manipulation. Power via suppression. Power via segregation. This is why we need to talk about love and emotional intelligence. And this is why people kind of shun those who, get into their feelings. Well, a man ain't supposed to cry, all these other things. I've never met a more dangerous individual than an individual that's in tune with their emotions, but also trains to kill. Those are very dangerous people because they have a purpose, they have a discipline. They also have a training regimen that allows them to go on that level if necessary. But it's not about hate. It's about defense. It's about unconditional love in the name of compassion and empathy. But I will F you up if you go there. That's the type of shit we need from our young people. Because then they're not going to allow certain political ideologies to exist in this country if that's the case. Notice I didn't say a particular label. Actions. That's the party. Actions. If your actions are inclusive with what agape love is, let me read the conclusion for you here, and then we'll go on. While personal forms of love enrich individual lives, agape, unconditional and universal love, is the form with the highest potential to improve the human condition at scale. It transcends culture. It avoids the entitlement resentment trap and builds cooperation across boundaries. Now, let's get into the Abrahamic religions, plural. I'm not all about that bias, folks. I want truth. I want accuracy. No pun intended there, Goose. Oh God, word. So here we go. All three Abrahamic faiths contain teachings that mirror agape's universal selfless love, right? You have Judaism, you love your neighbor as yourself, as in Leviticus. The Old Testament is attached to the Torah. Okay, that's why they said Judaism. Christianity, which is more aligned with the New Testament. The Sermon on the Mount, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, blah, blah, blah. And Islam, all right, the Prophet Muhammad's teaching, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Hadith, the Quranic commands for mercy and compassion towards all of creation. Sounds great. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Where's the evidence? You have millions of people who follow these teachings, supposedly. Where's the evidence? See, this is what I mean when you train to defend that shit. When you are about that life, not about yourself, about the compassion of others and the empathy of others in the face of tyranny, in the face of hypocrisy, apparently. Agape love doesn't have to mean that you're complacent. It does not. In fact, it should require you to go that route. And again, I'm not asking for violence, ladies and gentlemen. But if we want to have a chance on this planet, we need to put the brakes on a lot of the crap that's going on right now. Because none of it reflects love. None of it. Well, agape love anyway. But I digress. Where they contradict. Now make sure you take this with you, folks. This will be up on my YouTube channel with the rest of my videos. I try to keep it under an hour, but And there's three questions I want to touch on before I wrap up. So let me talk about this, and then I'll get into those questions, and you guys can put your answers in the comment section and your thoughts as well. Where they contradict. This is where the friction happens. Hello. All right. So in group preference, it's kind of self-explanatory. While the ideal statements are universal, the lived traditions, the actions, often prioritize the faithful over outsiders. In all three religions, mind you, certain blessings, protections, or moral obligations are directed more towards believers than toward non-believers. So is it about the people, or is it about you? Because clearly your teachings right? This is why this is for young people, because young people aren't not stupid, ladies and gentlemen. It is scary how smart and quick-witted these kids are. And there's a lot of external forces that are trying to keep us from educating these people truthfully across the board and let them come up with their own assessment, their own agenda, so to say, based on the truth, not some watered down aspect of society based on a screen in your face. In-group preference, ladies and gentlemen. All three religions, certain blessings, certain. Then what are we doing here? Conditional love. Many interpretations teach that God's love is conditional. That is very true. Given fully to those who obey divine law. And that divine law is transpired through what? Preachers, pastors, bishops, primarily men. And we see the evidence of what goes on with these people in these institutions when it comes to children. Love my ass. That departs from Agape's unconditionality, especially when it's withheld or paired with punishment for those who don't submit, right? It's funny, Christians always say, oh, you're not a Christian, you don't know what you're talking about. Let it be known, ladies and gentlemen, I started going to school, a Christian school, mind you, when I was 4. We went to church every Wednesday at that school, mind you, every Wednesday. And my parents had me in church on Sundays. I was reciting scriptures by the time I was 7. Christians, don't assume people don't know what they're talking about, especially when they've been a part of something all their lives that has been nothing but a lie. This is why you teach kids the truth, so they're not going to have this type of sentiment when they get older. Because there are a lot of adults that I know of, especially, that grew up in the church, around the church, blah, 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 that actually came across critical thinking and the Socratic method and destroyed all that shit. This is why you have to what? Submit. This is why it's required that you have to obey divine law or be punished. Because if you don't do what the divine law tells you to do, which is normally again being thrown at you by some dude, you're going to get punished. Now, what type of God is that? Because that's not love. That's not love, folks. Just saying. Anyway, moving on. Okay. And lastly, why the contradiction exists, real quick. Pragmatic survival, right? The early communities of each faith were minority groups under threat. Building strong in-group loyalty was key to survival. That's, again, if you just look at world history, that's through and through. Cultural context, right? The social worlds in which the text emerged were highly tribal. And then you have the doctrinal control, right? Defining true love, quote unquote, in terms of doctrinal correctness. It reinforces authority and unity within the group. Okay. Again, this, the punishment aspect of it, right? Using the sword to make somebody submit to a particular ideology. There's no room for love in that situation. There was no room for it. I mean, you can look at the Inquisitions. Right? So real quick, let me just read this real quick, and then I'll dive into the questions. And I'll put the questions up on the ticker at the bottom here. See, we're going with number 1 right there. Boom. You guys can look at that and see how you feel. Yeah. I'm gonna read this real quick though, because so the prompt I typed was understood, right? It seems that religion has an obligation to not push an Agape style of existence for humanity as a whole. In the response here, you can see for yourself. Yes, that's a fair reading of the historical and structural reality. if we're being blunt, organized religion, especially in the Abrahamic tradition, has rarely operated as a pure vehicle for Agape on a global, unconditional scale, because its core purpose is not simply to promote universal love. That's not its sole purpose. It's to maintain, protect, and expand a particular covenant, doctrine, and community identity. This is why race is so powerful at the same time, because it's easy to have these parameters to maintain, protect, and expand a particular covenant, doctrine, and community identity, when the community identity, the easiest form of recognition for human beings, is vision, sight. Because I could see that coming. Oh, you don't look like me. Automatically, here we go. Automatically, your doctrine is kicking in, right? This is why it had to happen this way. This is why Sunday is still the most segregated day in America. If you think I'm joking, come on now. This is why. Because it's never been about love. Right? So can humanity evolve without a shared ethic of love? Not as a whole, no. Because who's defining what the ethic of love is? Who is the power that's defining that? It's not impossible, but it's going to be extremely difficult. So who says what love is? How does it play out? Because if we're talking about agape love, the existence of agape as the guide, a lot of this crap is going to go away, and that type of evolution for humanity is going to be, Jesus Christ, no pun intended. Second question: is the concept of agape love? I think again, adding love to that is a little redundant, but is the concept of agape love realistic in today's world? Yeah. Yeah, it's realistic because we have forms of communication now that we never had before. People literally cannot hide in this world anymore. It's virtually impossible. Let's see. I'm sorry, Goose. I just now saw your comment. Awesome. So you type, I think the problem is, at least with Christians, and you're a Christian, I hope no harm done here. Hit people with the Bible instead of reading it. Yeah. The punishment aspect of it. Yeah. They won't admit that non-believers are better Christians than they are. Yeah. I mean, if you just look at people's actions, folks. I grew up in a Christian household. Well, my mom still goes to church to this day, and she's in her mid 80s. I've met some really good people, dude, and I've met some really good people in the church, and it just, there's not enough of them, and it seems like there should be. It should be overwhelmingly. And one thing's for sure, young people should not be getting SA'd in these. It shouldn't happen, right? It's just this continuous contradiction that just turns people off, right? If being a good quote unquote Christian is your guide, then let your actions reveal that, right? There doesn't need to talk about it. Do your thing. Be that image. Be that icon. And then Marcus, what's up, Mark? How you doing, man? No, humanity will not evolve without a shared ethic of love, without the ability to love one another and to unite in a way that follows the path of loving one another for who they are. Yeah. It's tough to have that kind of discipline. Yeah, it will cause us to stagnate. Yeah. And Goose, you typed, I think you can't evolve without being unified, but love doesn't necessarily have to be the binder. That is true. You don't have to necessarily love somebody to respect them. Now, I can wish somebody well and not necessarily have to indulge myself in unconditional love, right? That's very true. That's very true. That's very true. All right. Let's see here. I mean, we can get into that and the subtle contradictions, but let me just get to the bottom line, folks, and I'll let you guys go. So you can start, and well, hopefully you can enjoy your weekend if you're off today. If you're going into work, respect. I'm going to get back to work as soon as I finish here. So bottom line, folks, religion as an institution has no built-in incentive to promote full-scale agape for all humanity. Okay? Actions always speak louder than words, folks. That includes the Bible. Because there's a lot of contradictions in there. Okay? Because full unconditional love erases the very borders that give the institution its identity and authority. All right? So the institution is more important than peace. The institution is more important than love. Because true agape is not going to allow that authority to run rampant and tell each other and tell people how to love, because it's very clear what love is, right? And then we can get into the chemical aspect of it, because that's where it starts, right? It's all in your brain. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things, right, that make up the human mind, right, which influences your actions, inactions, your feelings, your love, a whole slew of things, right? So that's something also to think about. Individuals within religions can and often do live in ways that reflect agape principles. But as a system, organized religion tends to balance love with boundaries. That's not agape. A balance that leans toward preservation of the faith community over universal inclusion. So what's the purpose of religion? I dare say it has nothing to do with love. Well, not of the agape principle. Yeah. So, hey, appreciate you guys. Oh, inventory. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. Goes typed. I mean, just in novels, we see the unifying force of a utopia is fear, hate, and propaganda. Cliches are cliches for a reason. Yeah, indeed. Uh-oh, Marcus got a meeting tomorrow. Public meetups next Saturday. Nice. Oh, hell yeah, man. Enjoy that shit. Oh, man. Oh, it's co-opted. Interesting. All right. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, they say love is what you make it. And heaven's what you make it. Hell's what you're going through, right? Yes. Yeah. That's a biggie right there. People using religion as a coping mechanism, and you know what's crazy about that, Goose? People use religion as a coping mechanism because agape is not the answer, so to say. Agape is not the guide. With unconditional love, you're not going to need religion. You're not going to need religion. You're going to have a set core principles based on your society in terms of food, shelter, just living day to day. Our ancestors clearly were involved in that. But yeah, with agape principles as the guide, religion is not necessary, because we're not going to answer to anybody, but the expectations of ourselves. And that's a lot, and that's something people don't want to deal with, right? It's tough to look in the mirror and expecting something from yourself when society in itself doesn't reflect that. Don't tell me to act right when you got people in power that are clearly not. It's contradictory. You have to be a fool to not see that. But it is what it is. Folks see what they want to see. Again, that's, like you mentioned, that's why they take up religion, to get through the day. When love gives you life, and that's what people need. Dig it. I appreciate you guys, yo. Again, Duet Ninja Dojo live, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Friday. If I'm not going to be on here on Friday for some odd reason, then I will give you guys a heads up and say, hey, we'll move it to next week. My work schedule fluctuates greatly, so and I got old people on, I got to take care of and shit like that. So hey, it is what it is. But hey, I appreciate you guys, man. A great conversation. And by all means, go love somebody, but it starts with yourself. Just saying. Y'all have a good one, man. Do It Ninja Live, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hoo-yah. Peace and blessings, y'all. Ethical leadership. Excuse me. Let me explain ethical leadership to you. Ethical leadership is the practice of making decisions that prioritize the common good and are based on ethical values and principles. Ethical leaders consider the needs of their employees, customers, and communities. They also encourage their teams to act ethically. Leadership sets the stage, ladies and gentlemen, especially when you're talking about those who they are leading. This is the danger that people don't want to talk about when we're talking about entertainment. Money suppresses a lot of things when you're weak. And that weakness comes from the fact that a lot of these corporations that are paying people to go out there and buy shit are suppressing the monies that you can obtain. Because there is no ethical leadership when money rules the table. Is it capitalism's fault? I don't think so. This is an individual choice. Just because capitalism exists the way it does not mean that you cannot act and react ethically.